Hey, everybody, welcome to my webinar. Today, we're talking about the real shift that no one is talking about. I think that when it comes to AI, it's being discussed in every corner of every office, whether you're at home or you're in the office. AI is being used, discussed, tested, everything. But there is one big shift that not enough teams are focusing on. And today, that's what I'm going to be talking about. And really, it's the way that we've been doing things will never work again the same. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about this. So, just to give you a little bit background on myself, I'm Andy Halko, the CEO and founder of Incivia. I started it 24 years ago and have worked with hundreds of clients all over the world. I also have written two books and launched a new product called Buyer Twin, which is all about creating a clone of your ideal customer and using that to improve your marketing and sales. My recent book, The Omniscient Buyer, really goes into the topic that we're going to be talking about today: how everything is changing with AI and our target audiences. So let's keep digging in and learn a little bit more. Two things that are really important to me and have been since the day I started my business are technology. I have a background in programming. I've always been intrigued by technology and leveraged it. It's one of the reasons my agency really focuses on working with software and technology businesses. And then human psychology. This is a topic that I find so interesting, and especially given that it's so influential. To me, human psychology is what's behind everything: how people make decisions, how they evaluate. And so, if you're in marketing, you're in sales, you create products, you're trying to retain people, it all comes down to how we think as humans and how we can influence behavior. In marketing, we're trying to pique interest and influence people to convert. In sales, we need human psychology to understand how people decide, how they buy, how they evaluate, to get them to say yes and close the deal. When we're creating products, same thing. We need to understand how humans think to create a solution that will solve their problem and do it in a way that they'll enjoy. Now, one of the big things that's coming up is AI. It is changing the game across everything. It is not just influencing one department or one type of work. It is really changing every role in every single department. And so for me, these two things that I'm extremely passionate about and I've spent years really focusing on are coming to a head. This idea of how do we behave as humans? How do we think? And AI, this society changing technology, to me, are coming together in a really unique way that we have to pay attention to. And so every conversation that I seem to hear about AI comes down to how we're adopting it internally. How are we using it to improve our organizations or even our role or make our lives easier? And so most of the conversations are around efficiency. How do we get more out of what we're doing every day? Or they're about speed. How can we improve how fast we're getting things accomplished? They're about automating. How do we move things forward with less people and really change how we work? Cost reduction. Are there ways that we can remove processes that really reduce the amount of cost that we're facing? And then scale. How do we scale our organizations using AI in a new way? So if you go to every conference, you jump into any conference room, you're going to hear these conversations. How do we use AI to change our organizations? But for me, That's only 50% of the conversation. Half of the conversation is how do we change ourselves with AI? The other half that's so important and is based in human psychology is that our target audience, our buyers, the people that we're trying to convince to be interested in our organizations, to buy our products or services, they are changing too. How they do everything is now being influenced by AI. They are using AI in their entire process. They have new behaviors, a completely different set of expectations. And really, I think that people are having the wiring of their brains changed as they use AI, and that changes how they evaluate and decide. And so while we're focused on how AI can be used within our organizations, what we really need to be spending much more time on is how is our audience changing based on their use of AI, and how is that going to impact our organizations and the way we market, sell, create products, provide customer service. All of these things that we interact with other humans, those humans are changed. They're no longer just a person, they are now augmented by AI. And that's really this topic and idea of the AI influenced buyer. And so we look at some of the things that are changing with these audiences. So if you're designing, you're building, you're trying to attract, you're trying to convince people or retain them, this is something that you need to be adopting and adjusting everything you're doing to, because it is such a monumental shift. So, what are these humans that are adopting AI and using it in their decision making process? How are they changing? Well, time expectations. Before, I used to research something, and I'll talk about this further, but imagine awareness today, Google. We all for years would go and do a Google search. We would get a list of links that's multiple pages long. We would click on them. We would have to consume the information, maybe go to a couple pages, come back to the search, maybe change our search, go to a couple of other sites. And all that time, we've got to retain the information, save it in extra tabs, or write it down. Now AI delivers an answer for us. It does all of that. It goes out and it grabs the information, compiles it, and presents it to us. And then we can change our question or add deeper questions. So, time expectations, the time it takes to discover new opportunities, to evaluate anything, those are changing because right now AI is taking time out of a lot of the common equations that we used to have in what it took to evaluate, buy, decide, and work. Effort intolerance. This kind of drives towards that as well. People are expecting that everything will take less effort. AI has really created the ability to do things quickly, to solve problems fast, to accomplish work tasks quickly. That effort intolerance is going to be transferred to the people that uh, we want to do business with. We are going to expect the sales process to be as effortless as using AI. We are going to expect product to be as effortless as using AI. And so we really have to understand that humans are going to expect that things are easier than they ever have been before because AI has made such a transformational change in how things are done. Trust recalibration. And I talk about this a lot, but over the years, who do we trust? And marketing and sales is a lot about trust. For me, over the years, it's been about building trust with our audience, that each step, seeing an ad, clicking on it, you have very little trust. And then you read, you gain more trust. You see a proof statement and you get more trust. And at some point, you're willing to convert. And we trusted what Google would give us in certain searches. And so our trust in what we get in emails, etc., a lot of that is being moved to AI. We are seeing that humans psychologically are gaining more trust in what AI delivers, especially as the models get better and smarter, and we're getting answers that are void of hallucinations. We're seeing that people are putting trust in that AI. The answer that they get is what's right. And so the question is, do they trust AI and the answer that they're getting more than what you're saying on your website or in your sales process? And think of it from the perspective of you say something in sales, they go ask their AI for verification. Who are they trusting? And so trust recalibration is a big piece of this changing human psychology. The next is personalization in everything. If you're using AI in a significant way, you know it's learning about you. And when you ask a question, it's using all of the chats or many of the chats that you've had previously to shape the answer that it gives you. It understands your needs and starts personalizing almost invisibly to who you are and what you need. And so the expectation from buyers today is going to be that the marketing process, the sales process, the products, they have that same level of invisible understanding, invisible personalization, that you know them and can deliver something unique and specific to them without them even asking. And then invisible influence. I talk a lot about how we really have to think about our target audience as having an invisible coworker that has access to every piece of information in the world and has a very strong opinion about almost anything. That invisible coworker is sitting next to them and having conversations all day long. And so if they are researching, if they are evaluating, they're making decisions in a buying process, they're using a product, that invisible AI coworker is chatting in their ear and giving its opinion about what they should do. And so if you look across all of these, the people that we want to do business with, these are some of the things that AI is starting to shift their behavior and rewire their brains. And with that, we have to make sure that we're adapting to this changing world. Because if we don't adapt, we're going to be selling to a whole different type of human that doesn't understand us. For me, the biggest piece of all of this is that AI just makes things easier. Humans do not like friction, they do not like pain. If you look at the products that have been developed over centuries, they're all about reducing friction and making things easier. Your commercials on the TV that talk about, oh, this will make it more fun, make it better, etc. Everything that gets created is about reducing pain and friction and feeling bad. And AI is great at accomplishing that. That's why I really believe that there is no go back. You look at something like search. Before, we would have to go out and click on a bunch of links, we would have to research, we would have to understand the information and interpret it and make decisions, whereas AI delivers answers and then continues to have a conversation with us. It's just easy. It reduces friction. And so when we look at all these things that AI does, it's reducing friction in achieving work, in making decisions, in researching information. And so there will never be going back to what it was before. So for those that are out there that think search, Google search in its form that it's been in the last 2 decades is going to stay the same or still be as relevant are wrong, because human nature is going to drive people to use AI because it just gets rid of the friction. And we look at things like manual workflows feel broken. Training feels outdated. Why would I get training from you when I can have an AI assistant that just helps me through the process. Multi-step feels like poor design, where if I have to take multiple steps to get through a process, chat has trained us that there should be no steps. We should just get through what we need in one easy interface and very personalized to our needs. Repetitive input feels absurd, and waiting feels incompetent. And so AI is again rewiring us and shifting how we think and how we do things. And again, this is your target audience that you're trying to influence to consider your organization or buy from your organization. These people that you're targeting are being rewired. And so you need to be making sure that you're adapting to that rewiring. One of the big things is this is not contained to awareness. I've talked about Google search a couple of times. That's very early. I think when most marketers talk about AI and how it's influencing marketing, they think, oh, it's replacing Google search and it's about awareness. That's not true. It's touching every part of the journey, not just from where they discover a company, but how they consider them. So things like asking for comparison charts and saying, give me a chart that says, what are the pros and cons of these two different companies? Show me the strengths and weaknesses. Pull together for me every review and every piece of information that has ever been said about this company and give me a summary of it. So it's not just that they're finding the company, they're going through consideration with it. And then they move to evaluation and decision. Things like uploading all of the quotes or proposals or sales information that you provide them into their AI and saying, can you develop a scoring system and then score all of these companies based off of that for me? And so now AI becomes the decision maker itself. It says, oh, this is the best option for you. You might consider this company, but here's the one that I would recommend. Because that's what AI does. It has an opinion. And then, even in the decision making process, as you provide information, it's being verified by their AI. So if you tell them a process is going to take a certain amount of time, a certain cost, or anything else, they'll go to their AI and they will double check it. It becomes that invisible decision maker that's part of the process. And then we look at usage and renewal. One of the big things that I'm seeing is a change in where AI is embedded in organizations evaluating their vendors, evaluating their costs, and providing instant and automatic recommendations for changes. So imagine that instead of an accountant randomly seeing a bill and saying we should evaluate this vendor, or someone getting to the point that they feel unhappy about a vendor in an organization, that AI is just analyzing the interactions through meeting recordings and through spreadsheets, and then it's surfacing and saying, you know what, we should consider a new vendor, and here are three options. And so, what I really look at is that AI is changing the entire journey. And it's not just changing the human, but in some cases, it may even be replacing the human in the decision making process, in the renewal process, the awareness, all of these different stages. And so, if we think AI is only influencing awareness and answer engine optimization, that's the wrong way to look at it. We really have to pay attention to every part of our journey and every interaction that we have with potential customers, because AI is now involved. And so we want to talk about the economic consequences of this. So let's say that all of our target audiences, our ideal customers have changed. All of our existing customers have changed. They are using AI. They are making decisions in new ways. with AI as their co-pilot, or they've even pushed tasks completely, like renewals, off to AI to handle on their own. So, what does that mean for businesses and organizations? Well, shorter consideration windows. People will come in and AI will provide options and recommendations very quickly. The old days of someone needing to go out and create a short list and evaluate it, that they would consider 10 companies, do some research, whittle it down, ask some coworkers. Well, now they're going to go out to their AI and say, this is me and what I need. Give me the best options for it. And the AI will provide very clear recommendations. So there will be much shorter consideration windows, not just in the discovery, but also through that evaluation and decision process. Compression of differentiation. We all work so hard to make sure that people understand why they should buy from us, what makes us unique, what is the value that we deliver. Well, AI is taking all of that information and it's summarizing it, it's synthesizing it. It's not producing it in the same language that you are. That copy that you spent hours trying to figure out, that you thought, oh, that's going to influence our target audience. AI rewrites it in the way that it thinks the person that asked the question wants to see it. And so now this idea of what makes people different, well, AI may go out to 10 companies and synthesize all their differentiation in their own language. Reducing switching cost perception. One of the moats that a lot of organizations have stood on for years is the fact that once we're in an organization, we're embedded, someone won't leave because it's too hard. Well, AI makes it easier for companies to evaluate how to potentially migrate or move to another company. It actually provides the systems to say, hey, let's put this document or this output export into AI and give me the new import that I need for my next system. So, whatever it is, AI is actually influencing the idea that it could be easier to jump ship and go to another company. Trust is the battlefield. I talked about this a little bit already, but I really think over the next couple of years for our target audiences, understanding where trust lies. Is it in the AI? Do they believe what AI is telling them? Do they trust the results? If AI says, I recommend this company or I recommend this decision, do they trust it absolutely? Or do they trust you? And if you speak against their AI and say it's wrong or I disagree with it, who are they going to side with? Are they going to feel like they have ownership in what they learn from their AI because it's their co-pilot that they use every day? Or are they going to believe you? And so I think there is a battlefield of trust, especially because many of the AI companies are going to be fighting for trust. Their business model relies on people that use it trusting the output. And so they are going to work really hard in features and advertising and campaigns, PR, to make sure that consumers trust them. And then finally, attention scarcity. So as people move to AI for many of their tasks, we see, I know for me, I spend half my day sometimes in an AI chat or multiple AI chats, and I'm not on the web. I am not looking through websites. I'm not seeing ads. I'm spending less time in different places. There's going to be a lot out there. And I think attention scarcity is going to be one of those things, is that we're going to see decreases in traffic and visibility, which I think we should dive into even deeper. So, one of the things that I'm really talking about, and this does go back to the answer engine optimization, is that now that people are doing these discovery tasks, consideration, and evaluation in their AI, they are not going to websites. The old days of someone does a Google search and clicks on 10 different websites and does some browsing is probably gone. Again, that effort is way too high. And so, what you're going to see as an organization is your traffic drops. There will be less of those looky loos people that happen to click on it or are looking for educational information, whatever it might be. You're just going to see your traffic drop. That is a reality. But the alternative is that the traffic that does end up coming to your site is going to have much higher intent. So you're going to get rid of those looky loos, people just browsing for, you know, because they randomly landed on your site or they happen to click on a random link. There is going to be less of that because AI will be providing recommendations and answers. And when there finally is a link, or they take information and they search from their AI in Google, then go to website, their intent will be much higher. They'll be further in the process. And so I really talk about with websites, our traffic may go down and we're going to see half the numbers that we used to. But that doesn't mean that our site is less valuable. In some cases, more so, because anybody that actually ends up there is going to be at a point where they're ready. They're ready to talk to someone. They already went through the discovery process. They already asked for comparisons. They already asked for reviews. They asked for proof. They asked questions about, why should I choose this company? They did all of that work in their AI. And when they finally get to their site, what they need is validation and proof of what they learned. And once they get that, they will convert. And so you're going to see less traffic. You may even see less visits, but anybody that does come to a site is going to be much higher intent. And so you've got to reshape your message to make sure you're handling people that no longer want education and now want mostly verification. So, one of the exercises that I've really been working with organizations on is to evaluate their buyer journey for these new AI influenced buyers. And so, what we typically do is we look at the different stages: awareness, consideration, decision. And in each of them, we evaluate three different things. One, how is AI changing buyer behavior at this stage? Then we talk about what does it actually change and then how we must respond. Let's use the example here that's for the decision stage. Well, the buyer behavior that's shifting is that prospects are uploading all vendor proposals, pricing sheets, contracts, emails into AI. They then ask the AI to create an evaluation rubric or scoring model. Then they ask the AI to score each vendor against that model that it created. And then the AI delivers a confident, ranked recommendation saying, here's probably your best option. Here are some alternatives and why you might choose them. Very different process and decision making. So, what does this change? We're judged against criteria that our buyer might not have defined. They asked AI to create the criteria, they didn't create it themselves. It's more thorough. It may look at things that they hadn't looked at. Differentiation is normalized in the scannable, comparable attributes. So again, back to that AI, that point of differentiation. Well, if AI is reading all the vendor proposals, that interesting language that you may have developed could be synthesized down to just one bullet point that's compared to another bullet point in a different proposal. And then nothing gets overlooked. The one thing is in the past, someone may have forgotten an email or they're only able to hold so much information about all the vendors they're considering in their head. It's very limited. AI will have all that documentation and it will forget nothing. Any statement that you provided in any document, in any email, will be surfaced and be considered. And so, something to think about that our words, every word delivered, can potentially have more meaning and more influence. And so now we look at, as an organization, how must we adapt? We've got to understand how AI interprets our proposals and language. You should be uploading these documents into AI and saying, what do you think about this? What are the key points? How would you rank this compared to others? We've got to structure our proposals for machine comparison, not persuasion. So, can a machine even read your PDFs? And if they can, is it producing consistent output of what the message is? And then we want to align messaging, pricing, and claims across all documents. What we want to do is make sure the AI sees algorithmic patterns in our message, that we're saying the same thing multiple times so it can understand this is the consistent message and not just random sayings that don't connect. So, one of the things we should really look at that I just mentioned is how our documentation is being looked at with AI. I will tell you right now that if you are delivering PDFs or you have PDFs on your website, you're delivering any information to a potential prospect, whether in marketing or sales, there's a very high likelihood that it's now being uploaded into an AI and people are asking questions about it instead of reading it. And so what we're going to see is that continuing. They're going to ask questions in their AI about your website. They may upload your sales deck. They're going to upload onboarding documentation, proposals, support articles, your pricing, contracts. That will get consumed by AI, and that buyer, your target audience, will be leveraging it to understand your business. And so those old documents that we designed to look really nice, we created creative messaging. Now the computer is reading that and trying to come up with a synthesized answer for the person asking the question. And so in the old days, we may have created messaging that we felt like appealed to our target audience and was creative and really piqued their interest. But to an AI, those different messages are unclear about the core value or the interesting piece that it really needs to surface. And so we've really got to think a little bit now about our writing to make sure that AI interprets clearly what we want to communicate to an audience. And so it's looking at all of our documents through a new lens, that they're not necessarily human consumed, that a human never actually reads any of it, that it's all put into AI and there's all synthesis and then delivery of answers based on them that we never wrote. And so this is really the call for me. I think that anybody out there, you may be right now thinking about, how do we adopt AI? What is the AI tool that we need to use? Or what is the governance policy that we need to put in place internally? But you're only focused on half of the change in society, the AI shift. The other half that you have to spend time on is, how is our audience changing? And what does that mean for how we're found, for how we're considered, how they're making decisions about whether they work with us? That other side of the conversation should be happening in every conference room, in every organization right now. That we need to be looking at our marketing, our sales, our customer service, and we need to be thinking about how our potential buyers, how our existing customers are doing everything differently using AI, and what that might mean for our current processes and our current approaches, messages, whatever it might be. So this is a call. This is a call to arms. If you're not focused on this, you are going to get behind. So I really suggest, as anybody in any organization, if this is not a conversation, make sure that it is. And so that's the end of our first webinar on this. We're actually going to have a series where we're going to dive in deeper. The next one is going to be about AI specifically in the awareness stage. Then we're going to be doing a webinar on AI in decision making. And we're really going to dig deep into how buyers are changing in those areas and what tactics we need to do to change them. So, this was really the idea of the overall shift that we're seeing. If you want the slides, you can use this QR code or we'll be sending them out after. But check out my book, The Omniscient Buyer. Reach out to me at andyhalko.com. I'm helping organizations adapt and change to this new world. But no matter what, make sure that you are paying attention to the shift and you are starting to adjust your marketing, sales, product, and customer service to these new AI buyers.